Welcome back to the Female Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Danny, as always. I hope you're doing well whenever you're listening to this. And in today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to give you an insight essentially into the way that I coach and the different methods that I use with clients because I am aware it's a little bit different to your standard coaching process. And this will be really insightful and beneficial for you to listen to, whether you're on your own health and fitness journey or whether you're a coach supporting others through theirs who cares about your clients beyond just kind of macros, calories, surface level transformations. If you genuinely care about the health and well-being of your clients, this is going to be an incredible podcast episode for you. And like I said, if you're on your own health and fitness journey and you want an insight into how you could go about achieving your goals without it just being a case of following macros and following step targets and tracking your scale weight, then this is going to be an incredible podcast for you. So essentially, if you're on your health and fitness journey and you want to achieve long-term success with your goals and you actually want to keep your health intact throughout that process, this podcast is for you. So I'm going to start with a review that one of my clients left me. And I'm then going to go into some of the processes that we've been through throughout her coaching process to help her achieve the results that she's wanted to achieve. And what I'll also do is I'll link my Google reviews page in the description down below so that you can see that this review is legitimate. I'm not just plugging out of thin air. She has genuinely left this review for me on my page. And this review, I'll start with that, is from researching a lot of coaches online, I found Danny's page. She really stood out to me as someone who really listens to their clients and is not just pushing a short-term diet plan. In our first call, I couldn't help but warn to her. Danny is really bubbly, supportive, and positive. She's not pushy or salesy and takes the time to get to know her clients and what's important to them in order for them to become the best version of themselves, whatever that looks like. She doesn't focus on just one aspect of health and works holistically to ensure that you are always working to meet your goals. We have regular catch ups where we chat about anything and everything. Danny is super knowledgeable about fitness and health and gives advice on a range of different topics. Thanks to Danny, I have become so much more confident in the gym and feel so supported to reach my goals of a healthier lifestyle long term. I would recommend Danny's coaching to anyone, and I'm excited to see the rest of our journey together. So, for context, this client of mine came to me wanting to improve her confidence in the gym and to become consistent with her training and with supporting herself from a nutrition perspective in order to improve her health, her performance, to build muscle tissue, and to also make progress with fat loss. She has achieved all of those goals. She's in an incredible position, and it's been wonderful to see her evolve throughout the coaching process and really make fitness a positive part of her life and create consistency with the gym, with her activity levels outside of that, with nourishing her body and also succeeding with those body composition goals as well of building muscle tissue and losing body fat. She's literally made progress across the board with every single one of those goals that she came to me wanting to achieve. And when whenever a potential client gets in touch with me, I will always have an initial call with them. And that call will help us establish whether we're going to be a good fit as a coaching client. I will, from that call, take a lot of information on how many times a week it would be realistic for my client to train. And I can then build a program based on that, taking into account things like their training history, their training age, their likes in the gym, their dislikes, their injury history, because I want my client's training program to be realistic for them to sustain over the long term in order for them to see long-term success. And alongside that, I want them to enjoy their training as much as physically possible because that is also going to be key for them to be able to sustain their efforts over the long term, as opposed to them falling out of love with training and then sacking it off essentially, or even just when you fall out of love with training and you start to dread your sessions, you don't have the same focus, you're unable to train with the same intensity, and you're not going to see as good results as a result of your training focus and your intensity and the quality of your sessions declining. So actually enjoyment is more important than a lot of people consider. And yes, there's always going to be days where we have to show up regardless of not wanting to train, and there's always going to be the odd exercise which you don't absolutely love in your program, and that's cool. That's a part of the process of self-development. It's a part of the process of pushing yourself and stepping outside of your comfort zone in order to see the progress that you want to see. However, we do, on the whole, want to find an element of enjoyment in the process of working to become a better version of ourselves, whether that be in terms of wanting to improve our health, our performance, to progress with our body composition goals. It's really important there's an element of enjoyment and satisfaction in that, and that we look forward to some of our training sessions at least. So, after that initial call, when we initially, and it goes beyond training as well, so that initial call is an opportunity for any potential clients to ask me any questions that they have, for me to ask them if they have any concerns, if there's anything that they're hesitant about, if there's anything that they're worried about, and then I can clear up those concerns and we can address their worries. I'll also get really curious about what their goals are, why they're wanting to achieve those goals, what they've done in the past, what's worked for them, what's not worked for them, again, so I can tailor the entire process to them as an individual. And that's a really important point, is that no two of my clients do exactly the same thing. They will have similarities, but there's always slight differences in the approach, because no two people are the same. And therefore, in order for us to see maximal progress, we have to take an approach that is specific to us as an individual and considers all of our circumstances, preferences, and our conditions essentially. So from a training perspective, just going back to that, when we initially started working together, with her confidence not being where it is now after she's worked on that, we stuck to exercises that she felt more comfortable with in the gym. So, as an example of that, let's use a hip thrust. I didn't have her doing a barbell hip thrust straight away because I knew that that would be quite intimidating for her to set up. I knew that she might be a little bit nervous to go in that area of the weight section. It also takes time to set up. She also might not be confident in her ability to lift enough weight during that exercise. So instead, we stuck with different variations of a hip thrust, such as a bodyweight hip thrust or a single leg hip thrust to begin with. And eventually, we progressed until the point where now she's confidently doing a barbell hip thrust, and she's gotten really strong with that exercise. And it's been incredible to see her progress in that way. And that's something that she would have never done alone without that support and without that encouragement there. And it's been, that kind of progress from a training perspective genuinely transforms the process, because training intensity and our ability to push ourselves out of our comfort zone in our training sessions and our ability to be confident in the program has such a huge impact on our progress over the long term, literally across the board. Strength is so important for everything. Resistance training is so important for every goal that you could possibly have. And our ability to push ourselves within those sessions is a large part of what defines the outcomes of our training program. You can give someone a perfect program on paper. You could go away and find a pretty effective program online. However, one, it's never going to be as effective as it possibly could be if it's not individualized, if it's just a generic template. And two, following on from that, if you don't have the coaching to go alongside that program, you're not going to get the most out of it, because your form is so important, training intensity is so important, and there might be little tweaks that you can make to things like foot positioning that you won't realize until you get that individualized coaching. So, and also when you get these generic programs online, they often aren't progressive. So they don't get adapted in line with how you're responding to the program as an individual over time. And they aren't structured in a progressive manner often. And that's often why people don't see the results that they want to see from these generic templates. And instead, they need this individualized approach with individualized feedback and guidance and coaching alongside that. So this client has been so consistent in the gym since we started working together. And she's also been sending me training videos for feedback since we started working together. And as a result of that, she's now stronger, she's more confident, her form has improved, she's built muscle tissue, and she's also made progress with fat loss as a result of her consistent efforts across the board. From a nutrition perspective, this client, and this is just again one example of how I might work with a client, doesn't track her food. But what I did do is I gave her some initial habit-based targets to work from alongside a guideline for how she might structure her day. Now, that is basically an example meal plan, to put it simply. However, any example meal plans that I give to my clients are based on foods that they already consume. I do that so that my clients are actually able to utilize this example meal structure, utilize this example meal plan. Whereas a lot of generic meal plans that are given out, people just don't use them. They don't follow them because they're not realistic. They're not based on foods that the client enjoys. They're not based on foods that the client tolerates well and already includes and has in the house. And so that creates this barrier for someone to be able to actually put this feedback into practice. Whereas what I do is I take what the client is already eating when they first start with me, and I tweak that. So I make adjustments to ensure that their diet becomes more supportive of their goals, and will continue to tweak that gradually over time based on how they respond. I will never overhaul someone's diet from the get-go because, again, that becomes very unrealistic for somebody to sustain. Whereas if I take what they're currently doing and make small tweaks, that becomes so much more realistic. And then once they've made that adjustment and they've had it in place for a while and their habits and behaviors have improved, we can then layer on more feedback rather than overwhelming them with too much to implement at once, because that usually sets someone up for failure. So if you're a coach, that's something that I would always take into account. I would never make multiple big adjustments at once. I would always make small tweaks to enable someone to actually take on board that feedback and implement it. We can't handle too much at once, and often that overwhelm just becomes counterproductive because someone will just end up going back to where they started at some point, or feel like it's impossible to make a change, which we don't want. We want our clients, we want you, if you're listening to this on your health and fitness journey, to be able to feel like, actually, this is doable for me. I can implement this. I can make this change, because that's empowering. Feeling defeated is not empowering. And so now, from a nutrition perspective, after I gave this client this initial example meal structure and the habit-based targets in line with that, after she'd implemented that initially, I now have her send me a food diary a couple of times a week at a minimum that I give her feedback on. So she'll take pictures of the meals that she eats for a couple of times, a couple of days in the week. She'll send them over to me, and then when it comes to her check-in each week, I will give her feedback based on those food pictures. And we also work on strategies to help her change her behaviors around food during our bi-weekly calls to facilitate the progress that this client wants to make. And that's something that I do across the board with all of my clients, because as I mentioned with training, it's all well and good having the perfect plan on paper, but if you don't have the right guidance and support to help you make those changes, you're going to get nowhere, because behavior change is not straightforward. It's not as simple as knowing what to do and then making that change. That's why a lot of people get stuck and they feel like a failure because they know what they need to do, but they're unable to implement it. Well, that's because behavior change is complex. It's not simple. We humans are very complex. We have complex feelings and emotions. We have behaviors that have built up over years and years and years. We have conditioning that's built up over years and years and years. And so we can't just say, this is what I need to do, let's make a change. We often need accountability. We often need the right support, the right guidance. We need an objective view on our situation, which we are unable to have when it comes to ourselves. And we need someone who we can trust to call the right shots and help us see what the right route forwards is when we're stuck in certain scenarios, when certain obstacles come up. We need support in navigating those obstacles, and there's nothing to be ashamed of from asking for help. In whatever area of your life you need support. We all do sometimes, because, like I said, behavior change and um our thought processes and our feelings are complex. It's not as simple as just knowing what to do and making a change. So don't give yourself a hard time if you're struggling with that. It's not abnormal. That's the case for most of us. And that kind of ties into one of the points that I wanted to mention in today's podcast. It kind of is one of the points in that achieving long-term success with your goals isn't complicated on paper when you like write down what you actually have to do to achieve those goals. The facts aren't complicated. And because of that, you don't need to go searching for something new. You don't need to go searching for this like complicated diet that's going to fix all of your problems. You don't need to go doing all these fancy complicated exercises that you might have seen on Instagram. That's not what you need to do, but what you do need to do is you need to implement the basics. You need a realistic plan that's specific to you as an individual. You need to make sure that the quality is there and that the basics you're executing them incredibly well. So for example, the exercises you're doing in the gym, you want to make sure that your form is absolutely on point, that your movement quality is there, that the training intensity is there, that you're prepared to train. You need to make sure that from a nutrition perspective, you're doing what's necessary to achieve your goals. Maybe you're having regular protein feedings throughout the day. Maybe you're prioritizing carbohydrates to support your performance and recovery. Maybe you're working on implementing a regular eating pattern. All of these things are not complicated, but they are necessary. It's necessary that you do them consistently over the long term if you want to succeed with your goals. And in order to implement those things consistently, we often need support with changing our behaviors because it's not easy, although it's not complicated, and it does require consistent effort. And that's the difficulty, is like life is never smooth sailing. If you wait for perfect conditions to make a change, you will never make a change because we're never going to be presented with perfect conditions. Life is always going to throw us curveballs, and that's one of the reasons coaching is so powerful, because it helps you navigate those curveballs and make sure that those curveballs that come up don't throw you off track, and instead you're still able to move the needle forwards towards your goals and continue to do what you can given your capacity and circumstances, rather than completely falling what you would class as off track. So, and you do need the right guidance to succeed, and you need a program that is tailored to you as an individual, rather than finding something generic online or trying to copy what other people are doing on TikTok, for example. I had my cousin actually asked her to support her with her training program recently, and I wrote her a program that was specific to her as an individual, specific to her goals. She has access to the app that I use with my clients, and so she has the demo videos in there, the teaching points, and she has her target sets, reps, rest period, etc. And she started following that program and said to me she realized that what she was doing before really wasn't effective, because she can really feel the mind muscle connection with the program that I've given her. She can feel that it's effective. She experienced muscle soreness for the first time. And she also came to me for an in-person personal training session where we went over her form on some of the key movements in her program. And she said how much more effective those movements felt after that individualized feedback. So it just goes to show there's no point in doing a generic program and not having it tailored to you as an individual and not having the right guidance, because you're literally just wasting your time. And you're putting in so much time, energy, and effort in the gym every single week, but not getting any positive outcomes as a result of that. So it's like, why would you not invest in making sure that you're getting the most out of your efforts? It's not a forever investment, coaching, but it is absolutely a worthwhile investment to make sure that all of your time, energy, and effort is not wasted, and instead it's effective, it's worth it, it's worthwhile, and won't not just worthwhile now, but literally for the rest of your life. So I know coaching is an investment, but when you find the right coach for you, it is genuinely one of the very best investments you could ever make. And that's coming from somebody who has had I've invested thousands and thousands into coaches and mentors throughout my time in health and fitness, whether it be pursuing my own health and fitness goals or supporting others with theirs. It can save you months or even years of wasted time, energy, and effort, and the benefits of finally finding your flow with all things health and fitness and having it as something that is a positive addition to your life and moves you forwards towards your goals can truly transform your life. in every way, shape, and form. It can literally impact the way that you show up personally, the way that you show up professionally, your energy, your mood, your behaviors, the maybe the parent you are, maybe the person you are at work, your ability to show up for your own clients in whatever capacity you do that. It can genuinely be life changing. And like I said, say that as someone who's invested thousands in my own coaches, but also has helped hundreds of clients achieve a transformation that runs far beyond surface level. Hundreds of clients of mine have genuinely transformed their lives, and it's been incredible to be a part of. And that's why I absolutely love what I do. So I hope today's podcast has been a nice insight into coaching for you. And that's only really scratching the surface on the kind of processes that I implement with my clients when they come to me and what I take them through. A lot of, like I said, the actual coaching takes place on the calls that I have with my clients, and I love my one-to-one calls with my clients because it's such a fantastic opportunity for us to discuss any problems that they've run into, any struggles they're facing, and then tackle those problems together so that they leave that call knowing exactly what to do and feeling confident in their ability to deal with the obstacles that come up and therefore overcome them and achieve their goals regardless. And that's a skill that genuinely can be applied across every single area of your life, not just health and fitness. There's that ability to handle difficult times, to handle the obstacles that come up in whatever area. So yeah, a lot of coaching takes place in the calls. We have a lot of really helpful conversations, and say a client is struggling with their body image or relationship with food, any struggles in those areas that come up, we discuss those during the calls in real time. We have a real conversation about it. I give them tools to implement to help them combat those struggles that they're facing, and then they go away and implement those tools and see progress with their goals alongside following the training program that they have, hitting their nutrition targets and having the accountability that I provide throughout the process. And I am big on kind of explaining the why behind things. So, any of my clients ever have any questions on why am I doing this? What is this for? I make sure to educate them on that so that they're set up for long-term success. They're not just seeing results within the time that we're working together. They actually continue to build on that throughout the rest of their lives. So I really hope that this podcast has been insightful for you. I would genuinely love to hear from you. If you're a regular listener, if you're a new listener, it would be my pleasure to hear from you. So please don't ever hesitate to drop me a message. My Instagram is Danny Bosworth, and I'm happy to hear from you whatever you want to say, whether it's feedback on the podcast, requests for topics you want me to cover, questions that you have for me in the podcast or outside of the podcast, or whether you just want to share something with me. I would love to hear from you. And if you are listening to this podcast and you would like support with achieving your own goals for good this time and genuinely transforming your life, then please don't hesitate again to drop me a message. You can just drop me a message on Instagram with the word coaching, and we'll get you booked in for a free consultation call. It would be lovely to get to know a little bit more about you and your goals and to be able to support you with them. Have a lovely rest of your day. Let me know if you need anything, and I will speak to you soon.